This is Talkback with Peter Christian and John King. 721-1290 or 1-800-568-5309.
This is Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and now 101.5 FM.
Newstalk KGVO.
Missoula's news.
Hey, welcome everybody. It's the Wednesday edition of Talkback, brought to you by Bitterroot Motors, doing it right for more than 41 years. Temp-Right service called Team Blue. With any plumbing or heating problems, it's 728-1111. Also brought to you by the Mustard Seed Restaurant. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are, a couple of bad pennies. Had a wonderful time with Rob Nadelson yesterday. That guy is so smart. He's wicked smart. It's a little intimidating for an old, old schmo like me. But anyway, that was fun. And today we have other guests that are coming on starting at 8:30. Tell me who we'll be visiting with a little bit later on.
Well, our first guest at 8:30 we'll have Steve Wagner from Project Liberty Tree. He'll be introducing Pastor Matt Trewhella.
Okay.
I think I'm saying that right. Anyway, he's come under fire for a sermon that he preached at the start of the legislative session. The name of the sermon, which probably enough to know why he got called out by the Missoulian, is,
right,
quote, "the duty of the lower magistrates in the face of tyranny."
Oh, wow.
End quote.
Okay.
So we'll get to talk from him about that sermon and about his positions on things, or I'm sure he'll be saying God's positions on things.
Exactly.
When it comes to politics in Montana. So that'll start at 8:30. And then at 9 o'clock, we'll have a really interesting chance, especially in light of events going on today in France. We have a reporter out of Philadelphia. I think the Philadelphia Inquirer is the paper that she writes for. Anyway, this is a lady that has spent time with the Yazidi people in northern Iraq.
Her name is Trudy. Yeah.
I only have her first name.
Okay.
But she'll be coming courtesy of the Montana World Affairs Council.
Right.
So we'll have. She's also interviewed some leading figures in the region. So anyway, if you haven't heard, big news in France this morning, and it keeps getting worse. After shooting 12 people, including a police officer who was on the ground with his hands up in the air, they just came out and shot him in the head.
Right.
In a position like that. Not long after that, apparently, a car bomb has exploded outside of a synagogue.
It's
not
also
far away.
Yeah, near Paris as well.
And our government over here in the United States is standing proudly, full of blaze and glory, able to see clearly where evil is in the world, but has yet to decide if this is terrorism or not.
Yeah. Josh Earnest was asked by a CNN reporter, you've been talking about the violence in Paris. Well, why aren't you using the word terrorism? I mean, when they come in dressed in black, carrying machine guns, yelling Allah Akbar, I mean, isn't that like the golden rule of terrorism? And we're not, when we're sure, then we'll definitely. So Josh Earnest, the White House is not willing to call it terrorism quite yet.
Not only are they saying Allahu Akbar, they're also saying they avenged the Prophet.
Oh, that's right, because this was a satirical magazine that published some comics about Muhammad.
Guys, this is over a cartoon.
Right.
Of all the things to kill for, a cartoon.
Well, remember the gentleman who, I believe it was in Scandinavia, who is still on the death list for publishing.
So this guy, he drew a picture of the Prophet Muhammad,
which you're not supposed to do.
And the Prophet, he kind of morphed the Prophet's head into a bomb, so it looked like a bomb about to explode.
Oh boy!
And then, of course, murders and riots and death and destruction, because you can't speak freely when you have different opinions, apparently, in certain parts of the world, even sometimes in France.
So anyway, that's what's going on. But closer to home, actually in Washington, D.C., I understand that you had a chance to visit with Ryan Zinke yesterday.
Yeah, that's right. I asked if they would give me a call after Zinke was sworn in, and they did that yesterday. Got a call around 1:30, and one of the questions people had asked me was, ask him what he's going to do with Boehner. Is he going to vote for Boehner or not? Now, by the time I actually got to speak with him, that vote had come and gone, but I got to get him to kind of explain his vote for John Boehner. So here we go.
All right, here we go. This is 3 minutes, so enjoy.
Well, one of the questions I've had my callers asking me to ask you is how you're going to make the decision, I believe you already have now, on whether or not to reelect John Boehner as Speaker of the House. I was listening to your interview with Aaron Flint this morning, and you seemed to be undecided and were choosing between Boehner and Gohmert at the time.
Yeah, I talked to the speaker, about it because my concern was, and I think a lot of Montanans share a concern that will you do what you say you're going to do? Will you address, the big things that face our country, immigration, which is securing the southern border first? If we don't do that, nothing else matters. Are you going to address fiscal restraint, and how are we going to address an $18 trillion debt? And there was questions, about the speaker's ability to lead. And so before I cast my vote, I wanted to be assured that he was going to exercise, along with the leadership team of McCarthy and Scalise, that he would be an effective leader. Now, one thing about a roll call vote is, and since my last name is Z, I was the last to vote. And it became clear, it was really about Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner. Louis Gohmert polled 3 votes. Daniel Webster polled 13. So really it was a question between whether you supported Nancy Pelosi or John Boehner. And at that point I was proud to cast a vote for John Andrew Boehner as the next speaker, in which he is now Speaker of the House. But if he doesn't perform, I can tell you that the sentiment, at least from this congressman, is that no one is safe and he has to be held accountable. And if he doesn't do the job that he said he's going to do, then I'll be one of the first in line to look at a leadership.
A few minutes ago, you said that you had confidence that you'd be able to override a presidential veto on Keystone XL. What gives you that confidence?
Well, I think it may not be the first one. It may not be Keystone the first time, but if he vetoes it, you'll see it again. And I think the more if he decides to veto legislation that is bipartisan. There's over 100 bills that sat in Harry Reid's desk that came out of the House that were bipartisan, had bipartisan support. And I think what we'll see if he vetoes bills that are in the best interest of this country, clearly, that have bipartisan support, that he's going to be further and further isolated, and we'll have enough votes because one thing about politics and the House is your elections every 2 years, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. I mean, you've got to understand who your boss is, and that's your district. For me, it's easy. It's the whole state of Montana. And, my job is to represent everybody and to listen and to make the best decision for Montana and America.
All right, that's Ryan Zinke, interviewed by our very astute reporter, Mr. John King. So there you go.
So we're going to go to a break. Give us a call at 721-1290. I want to know if you think Zinke made a horrible decision by choosing to vote for Boehner, or if you think he did the right thing. I'll go out on a limb here. I think he did the right thing by voting for Boehner, but I know lots of people disagree with me on this one.
Or did he do the politically expedient thing as a brand new rookie congressman? The last thing you want to do is anger the Speaker of the House, who's barely even learned your name yet.
Well, and apparently Boehner's had a little bit of vengeance. Some of the people that were appointed to post,
see ya.
That I think most of those votes went to the gentleman from Florida,
right? Mr. Gohmert.
No, Gohmert only got 3 votes.
Okay.
He sounds like the guy that wrote the dictionary.
Oh, Webster.
Yes, Daniel Webster.
Okay.
Daniel Webster got 12 votes, but now has been removed from the Rules Committee.
Anyway, we'll take a break, come back, and talk with Catherine and whoever's on line 2. And, of course, we have another line open at 721-1290. Hey, we're back on Talkback, 721-1290. It's Wednesday, and we're talking a little bit about Ryan Zinke, the new congressman from the state of Montana, as we like to call him, the lone congressman, because we only have one. We're only allowed one, but he's a big guy.
Also, we like to pretend like we're still cowboys.
That's true. Let's get Catherine on the line. Catherine, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Peter.
What's on your mind, ma'am?
Well, I seem to recall that Boehner threw fundraising support and dollars to Zinke during the campaign, did he not?
That's right. He came and spoke in eastern Montana for Zinke before he was elected.
That's right. So this seems like it was a quid pro quo for that because Zinke owed him.
You could call it that. I will say I was really surprised on Aaron Flint's show the other day. Aaron told me he had this interview. He actually got it before he did his show, but he pre-recorded it. Anyway, Zinke told him that that he was considering voting for Gohmert. Basically, I don't know. Basically, this is my opinion. I think anybody that chose to vote against Boehner, that's a Republican. Clearly, the Democrats all voted for Pelosi, most of them. I think there were a few outliers, but the people that voted against Boehner did so just out of a political grab bag for their own constituents because they thought it would help them in their polls at home. There was really no chance that Boehner was going to be dethroned, and there certainly was no chance by the time it got around to Zinke's time to vote because he votes very last.
Right.
And by then, as he pointed out, it was you win this position by a simple majority. So if Pelosi gets one more vote than Boehner, then she would win. So the next highest Republican, the one that had stolen most of the votes, got 12. And we're talking over 200 votes for Boehner. So
right. No, I know, but in some ways this is kabuki theater. I think because Zinke was the last one to vote, and so he was not. It didn't cost him anything to throw his support to Boehner.
No, and it was silly. I think it was kabuki theater when he was playing up like he wasn't going to vote for Boehner. Frankly,
yeah, exactly.
That's when it was a little.
I'm waiting to find out what kind of a speaker he's really going to be before I throw my support. How's that? That's my politician voice. You like that? That's what I'm going to do, and by golly, it looks like he's going to do it. So we're good.
Yeah. Oh well.
And thank you for your support, by the way.
Business as usual, right?
So he got John Boehner got 264 votes. Nancy Pelosi came in second with 164. Mm-hmm. So the people that rebelled against Boehner almost did what I'm sure they were trying for, almost got Nancy Pelosi elected Speaker of the House.
Well, yeah, but how many Democrats were off at Mario Cuomo's?
Like 12. That does not meet the gap.
So that
doesn't even get close to meeting the gap there.
No, but what it did was knock down the number of votes that
you
Boehner needed.
For a simple majority.
Yeah.
Yep. You're right.
Anyway.
Thanks, Catherine.
All righty. Bye.
Have a good day. Dave, good morning. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Yes, about Nancy Pelosi, I'm sure that she would have never won. I mean, there was Republicans wouldn't have allowed that.
No.
So,
well, I think with Nancy Pelosi, Dave, they would have had to vote for her to find out what she would have done as Speaker. Get it?
They would have voted and they found out afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah,
right.
Just a little play on words there.
But I find it kind of interesting about the Keystone Pipeline.
Okay.
The most expensive oil in the world to bring to market is oil sand oil. It costs about over $100 to bring it to market. And at this present time, that's not economical. It's going to shut down if oil stays as low. So there might not be any oil to go down that pipeline from Canada at the rate we're going.
Yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a pretty good point. A lot of oil in America's Midwest is going to be kind of too expensive to get to while prices are depressed the way that they are. But I think that you also have to keep in mind that this strategy, this is a new tactic for OPEC. Usually what they try to do is keep production levels at the level where they're making the most money. But they're trying a new tactic here, and that is to depress prices, likely to push other people out of the market, like the United States, Canada, and other producers that they find, Russia.
Well, if you remember, and this, I'm not sure whether this is an urban myth or not, but one of the tactics that many communities say Walmart used to do is when they would come into a community, they would slash their prices down to the bone and take a loss just so that other mom and pop places would go out of business, and then they'd bring their prices back up again. And I'm wondering if that's what OPEC is doing right now.
I really think that is what they're doing. One thing that I think OPEC doesn't realize, that in America we have other jobs we can do.
Yeah.
It's not like a petrostate where that's the only source of income, that and your inherited wealth.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true they're playing a game of chicken, but it'd be ironic if that pipeline was built and there would be no oil to go down it.
Well, we could use it as a giant slip and slide.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fun. All the way. And by the way, it's downhill from Canada all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So You look at the map, it's downhill all the way.
The Dems are always wanting to build new train lines and stuff. What we do is we just put vacuum tubes at the end of them, and you can run it just like you do those machines when you go to the bank. You go.
Right. That's absolutely.
Just shoot ourselves from Canada to Texas.
It's a niche waiting to be filled. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, thank you.
Have a great call.
I can't wait till we build the transcontinental zip line.
It would start 100 miles up and then go down all the way. All right, we're going to take a break. Who are we anyway? We're going to come right back with more of Talk Back. You have a comment or a question? Did you expect Zinke's vote, or was it just like, oh, yeah, I don't know, same business? Or do you believe? Let me ask you this. This is Zinke's first vote, his first official act as a congressman. Are you disappointed the fact that he didn't stand up for what a lot of constituents asked him to do?
Yeah, they wanted him to stand up for silliness and impossible dreams.
Well, my friend across the aisle there is telling us that it was a dumb thing for him to do had he done that.
Yes.
But others would have said he was standing for principle. What's wrong with standing for principle? It wouldn't have hurt anything because Boehner already won. We're going to come right back. I'm stuck in the 70s. Yes, indeed. 721-1290 is our number. That's John King.
I should say, when I said that some were standing up for silliness, think of the high moral heights that,
right.
For example, Brian Babin of Texas stood on.
All right.
When called to vote, to stand for freedom and liberty and good choices. In the House of Representatives, the person that he voted for to be Speaker of the House was present. That's it.
Oh,
he pulled the Obama move
the
of
Obama
voting
card.
present.
There you go. Voting present. Wow. You notice he didn't say president.
No.
He just said present. All right.
But this is obviously a stepping stone to become president.
I see.
If you don't make clear choices now,
that's right.
Then you can waffle on things like Keystone XL later.
Absolutely.
It's perfect.
If nobody can pin you down on where you stand, you can be president.
That's right.
All right. Mike, you're on Talkback. Hi.
Well, I'll weigh in on Zinke. I was disappointed. I'd like to see a different speaker. We followed the speaker far enough to know he should be booted out the door. But that isn't really the question I'm talking about. I got something that just bugs the daylights out of me. You watch the television, and it's Wounded Warriors. It's every complete. They always say, "Send us $19 a month." Why 19? Nobody has explained why isn't it 20 or 25 or
well,
15? Why 19? There's got to be a reason for it.
I will tell you why. Because anybody involved in marketing knows that people, when you say this on sale for $19.99, wow, it's not $20. It's only $19.99.
I don't think so. I think there's more to it than that. Why not? Well, then why not say 23?
Just send them $20 and stop worrying about it.
Yeah, well, no, it's just I'd like to know if there's some federal regulation involved in that 19 business because they all ask for.
Actually,
19.
I do know why. I do know why because. Who's the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers? Aaron Rodgers. Okay,
I'm glad you weren't really
Aaron Rodgers. If you watch, this is really going out on left field here. but if you watch him when he does his snap count always starts with 319. Okay. 319. I mean that's what he says every single time. It doesn't matter what they're doing. If they're passing or running, it's always 319. So maybe it's just 19 that way.
That works, I guess. That was the question. I thought there might be some federal law that says you can't say 20 or not. It's got to be 19. They all say 19. That sounds rather stupid. Somebody could change it.
I feel like I've entered a different world. I have no clue where this conversation is going.
Thanks for the call. I don't know where that. They just said random thing. Have you ever had those random thoughts just pop into your head?
Yes, I do. Very frequently.
Yeah.
And I look off dazed into the to the corner of the room.
And that's like Peyton Manning always, if his favorite plays always have the word Omaha in them. Yeah. So.
Real quick, just so everybody knows.
I'm taking the 319 to Omaha. But anyway.
I don't think John Boehner is like the best representative of conservative values or the best speaker. I think Trey Gowdy would have been a great speaker, but he didn't run because he supported Boehner.
He's got really bad hair.
It's true, but that seems to be like to be a winning point. Well, look at Boehner's. I mean, he's orange. He cries all the time.
He cries all the time.
Other people call him a sad tangerine.
I had not heard that.
Yeah. It's a pretty good joke.
He
I wish I could tell you who told me that joke.
He does cry at the drop of a hat, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So
anyway, but that being said, the time for the Republicans to choose a new Speaker of the House, before we get the showdown vote on the House floor,
right?
Just like in the state of Montana, we had about a month ago, the legislature, the two parties met, and they decided on who was going to represent them, right? And that's called conference. So they all get together. They say who's going to represent us in this next session at the conference. And then when it comes to the House floor, they know who they're voting for.
So it's more of a formality.
Yeah, none of these guys, not Yolo, not Webster, none of them came forward and said they wanted to run as speaker at the conference. They all polled it on Sunday before the vote over the weekend to national TV. Now, why is this a bit of a different game? Because instead of leaning on the rest of your allies in your own party to help you get elected, you are now depending on Democrats from the other party to help you get elected, and they're electing you out of spite for the person that beat them the last time.
So let me ask you this. How many Democrats voted for the
0.
ones? Yeah, well, so it didn't work.
No, of course it didn't work. Some Democrats voted for people that weren't Pelosi, but yeah, it didn't even get close to working, and it never was, because it was a very stupid tactic. But some people are really good at making up new stupid tactics.
Yeah, and this is something that's been of concern with talk shows for the last several months, in that Democrats, very seldom are there schisms in the Democratic Party. I mean, very seldom in the National Democratic Party. I mean, there are some, but they're not terribly, important. But in the Republican Party,
do you remember Hillary versus Obama?
I know that was years ago, though.
It's still going on.
I know, but what I'm saying is in the Republican Party, they're fighting like cats and dogs. Anyway, 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. If you would like, you can make your comment on our Facebook page, Facebook.com/KGVO, and we'll be happy to share that opinion with all of our listeners this morning. Right now, it's 8:30. We're going to take a little break. We do have a special guest coming up, or a couple of special guests. So stand by. We'll be right back. Hey, we're back on Talkback, 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. And John King is over there. I'm Peter Christian. This is Talkback. It's Western Montana's only live interactive radio talk show. So, we have guests.
That's right. We have Steve Wagner from Project Liberty Tree. He'll be introducing our main speaker for this hour, which will be Matt Trewhella, a pastor who recently gave the election sermon at the legislative session, or right before the legislative session. So, first off, let's talk with Steve. Steve, thanks for coming on the program this morning with us.
Oh, good to be here, John. Thanks for inviting me on.
Hey, Steve, this is Peter Christian. Tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your organization.
Well, I'm an elder in a small community church in Whitehall, Montana. And a few years ago, we began reading the history of the Colonial pulpit and the part that Christianity played in forming our nation, our culture, our forms of government, our law and stuff, and saw how important the election sermons were to all of that, and decided we'd bring back, or work to bring back that tradition in our country. Something that went on for about 150 years that very few people knew about. So we started in 2000 and went and preached an election sermon in the county courthouse, and in 2006 we took it to the state house, and this recent one with Matt Trewhella's preaching was our fifth one in the state house. So our vision is to work to reintroduce people to this part of our heritage and the importance it played in who we are as a people, and how our form of government was created, and those sorts of things.
Well, now, Steve, the first thing that pops into my head, and maybe it's just kind of a knee-jerk reaction with from the last 50 or 60 years, is the term, well, hold on a minute, what about separation of church and state and all that business, and the fact that you can't even have a copy of the Ten Commandments in a school? How can a minister stand up in the State House and preach a sermon?
Well, we'd need a lot longer radio show to go into all of the problems with the phrase separation of church and state, how it's been just jerked out of context, misused and misapplied all over the place. But For one, nothing is religiously neutral. There's no human being or human institution where people gather to do anything that is devoid of any religion. So the question is not how you can have a government without religion. It's the question of whose religious views or persuasion will rule or guide what's going on. So you also have the First Amendment protections that private people can say pretty much anything and talk about these things pretty much anywhere. So, and let's remember that the State House is the people's house. It's not the government's house. It's the people's house. It's our house where we conduct our civil affairs. And in this situation, what we do, no one's compelled to attend or no one's compelled to listen.
Sure.
Government taxes are not being used to promote this, that, or the other thing.
Well, now I understand, Steve, you have Matt Trewhella, I believe I'm saying his name right, correct me if I'm wrong, there with you?
He is, yeah, I'll put him on. He's the author of the book, The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. That was the subject of his election sermon, and I'll hand you off to him, and
Excellent.
He can talk with you further about that. Thank you, guys, and here's Matt.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Appreciate that. Pastor, good morning, sir.
Good to be here with you.
Can you tell us the proper pronunciation of your last name for us?
It's Trewhella.
Trewhella, all right. Like Cruella de Vil, just Trewhella.
That's correct. That's
All right.
the way to do it.
All right. So if you would, first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor for 27 years now. And I have a wife. We've been married for 33 years. We have 11 children, 11 grandchildren also. We reside in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so that's a little bit of background. I started a mission up there in Milwaukee called Missionaries to the Preborn about 23 years ago. And there were 8 abortion clinics in the city of Milwaukee when we started. And thanks be to God, there's only 2 left now, and abortion has dropped by 60% in the state of Wisconsin over that time. So we've seen God do a great work there also.
So tell us a little bit about your sermon, the sermon that you gave here in the state. Our local paper, the Missoulian, was very critical, or at least shined some negative light, I think, on you personally, and a little bit about your sermon. People are worried that it might, arouse militias, things like that. But I'll just give everybody the title. The title of the sermon was "The Duty of the Lower Magistrates in the Face of Tyranny." Explain where you get the title from and what the sermon was about.
Well, the sermon was about the doctrine of the lower magistrates, or the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. And the doctrine, simply stated, is that when the higher-ranking civil authority makes unjust or immoral laws, policies, or court opinions, the lower or lesser-ranking civil authority has both the right and duty not to obey the higher authority and, if necessary, to actively resist them. So this isn't about starting militias or anything like this. This is about the lower authorities standing in interposition in defiance of tyranny by a higher authority. For example, when it comes to the slaughter of the preborn, which is imposed upon the country by the Roe v. Wade ruling, the lower magistrates at the state level should have defied the federal government. They should defy it even to this day and stand in interposition for these little preborn babies and not go along with what the higher authority has done.
Well, I want to ask. Go ahead. Sorry.
This is actually a means to rein in the lawlessness of the higher authority through a bloodless means.
It just sounds like, Pastor, it sounds like good old-fashioned civil disobedience.
Oh, it's not civil disobedience. Our founding fathers never intended the states to be mere implementation centers or conduits for immoral or unjust laws, policies, or court rulings by the federal government. In fact, Thomas Jefferson and James Madison wrote the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions of 1798, just 10 years after the
ink had dried on the U.S. Constitution, already the federal government began to misuse its power, which the anti-federalists like Patrick Henry had written about that they would do. And so Thomas Jefferson, he said this in the Virginia Resolution, which was taking to task the unjust and immoral laws of the Alien Sedition Acts put together by the federal government. He said this, quote, "The states who are parties thereto, parties to the U.S. Constitution, have the right and are in duty bound to interpose for arresting the progress of evil." And James Madison, who's known as the architect of the U.S. Constitution, he said in the Kentucky Resolutions, quote, "And that whensoever the general government," he meant by that the federal government, "assumes undelegated powers, its acts are unauthoritative, void, and of no force." So it's important to understand that our founding fathers never intended the states to be mere conduits for unjust or immoral laws, policies, or court rulings. They never intended the federal government to be the sole arbiter of whether what they're doing is right or wrong.
Okay,
they expected the states to defy them when they did wrong.
Pastor, hang on. We're up against a commercial break here. So now, John, you wanted to ask a question before we go into the break?
Well, yeah, I wanted to read a little scripture when we get back and see how Pastor Trewhella would deal with this in light of his Doctrine of the Lower Magistrate, or the Doctrine of the Lower.
We're going to come right back with more of Talk Back. We have 2 lines open for you if you want to visit with Pastor Trewhella and Steve Wagner. We'll be right back. Hey, we're back on Talkback. It's 721-1290, 1-800-568-5309. Joining us on the phone this morning, Pastor Matthew Trewhella, who is with us from Wisconsin. Is that right, Matt?
That's correct.
All right. So we're right in the middle of a big discussion. And, John, you wanted to share
speaking with
scripture.
The pastor,
right.
So I figured I'd bring up some scripture. This is from Romans chapter 13. Here's the verse here. "Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from the fear of one in authority? Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid, for rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. They are God's servants, agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. Therefore it is necessary to submit to the authorities not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. This is also why you pay taxes, for the authorities are God's servants, who give their full time to governing. Give to everyone what you owe them. If you owe taxes, pay taxes. If revenue, then revenue. If respect, then respect. If honor, then honor." Do you find any disagreement between the verses that Paul writes? And by the way, he's writing this at the time that I believe Nero is in power, torturing Christians, in respect to the Doctrine of the Lower Magistrate.
Not at all. In fact, I address this passage in my book and show that this idea that Paul is teaching unlimited obedience to the civil government in the passage you just cited is absolutely false. First off, when you look at the passage, there isn't one place there where it says we're to give unlimited obedience to the civil government. Rather, men impose that upon the text. Just look at it. It's not there. They impose it on the text. Secondly, you have a huge problem with good biblical hermeneutics if you try to say that it's teaching unlimited obedience to the state, because the hallmark of good biblical hermeneutics is Scripture interprets Scripture. In other words, Scripture with a big S interprets Scripture with a small s. In other words, you look at a particular verse, Scripture with a small s, in light of the whole of God's Word, Scripture with a big S. And when you look at the whole of God's Word, you see many places where God's people disobeyed the government authorities and God commended them for it. Like the midwives were told by Pharaoh to kill the male Hebrew children. They refused to do so, and Scripture says that God commended them for doing so. Daniel was told that he couldn't pray. He prayed anyways. The 3 Hebrew children were told to bow down. They didn't bow down. All these people were commended for doing obedience to God rather than obedience to the state. The 3 wise men, they were told by Herod to come back and tell where the Christ child was. They didn't do it. God blessed them for not doing it. even Paul himself, who wrote Romans 13, when you look at 2 Corinthians chapter 11, he escaped from a city by going down the wall. He knew these civil authorities wanted to arrest him. Rather than submit to them, he escaped in a basket down the side of the wall and fled craftily. So this whole idea that we are to give unlimited obedience to the civil government is an absolute lie.
So where do you see opportunities for disobedience to the civil government through this doctrine of the lower magistrate in American culture and American society today?
Absolutely. That is an excellent question, because this isn't lawlessness. This isn't willy-nilly, I don't like something, so I just get to disobey it by the lower authority to the higher authority. There's 3 reasons in which the higher authority should be defied or opposed by the lower authority. The first is if the higher authority makes a law which is openly and contrary to the law of God, it should be defied. Number 2 is if the higher authority attacks the person, property, or liberty of someone under the jurisdiction of the lower authority. The lower authority has the duty to interpose and defy the higher authority and protect those under his jurisdiction. And number 3 is if the higher authority makes a law which is, since we live in America, makes a law which is contrary to the U.S. Constitution or contrary to the state constitution of the lower magistrate, the lower magistrates have both the right and the duty not to obey the higher authority, and again, if necessary, to actively resist them. So those are the only 3 reasons.
Well, number 2 seems
should be done.
Number 2 seems, just as a layman's opinion, a pretty broad opportunity for interpretation. I mean, every law, to some extent, really contains or inhibits liberty, right? I mean that's the whole Lockean system, is that you're giving up some liberties for. Sorry?
Not every law attacks the liberty of people. Does the Second Amendment attack the liberty of people? Not at all. It assures us, it reminds everyone that these are rights that we possess as people, to be armed. So no, not every law attacks liberty, and no, it isn't broad, and so that people can't understand what I just said. I think people would readily understand what I said. You look at Obamacare, that's an attack upon our person. It's a clear attack upon our liberty. The lower magistrates should defy. 27 states have actually challenged Obamacare. The question is, if the federal courts rule against them, will they just lay down to this federal tyranny once again, or will they actually interpose for the people and protect our persons from a federal government that's acting wrongly?
I guess what I wanted to ask you, this is Peter, Pastor. On a realistic level, we have a break in 1 minute. So if you can just kind of hit this in real quickly, 1 minute. On a realistic level, what do you expect people to do with the words that you are speaking? Because most folks, they get up, they go to work, they put their nose to the grindstone, they work hard. They're trying to make a living for their family. They're struggling like everybody else. And when you bring forth principles like these, what do you want the average person to do that isn't necessarily a government official to do with what you're speaking about?
What the role of the people is when it comes to the doctrine of the lesser magistrate is they are supposed to rally behind their lower magistrates when they take a stand. If their magistrates won't take a stand, they have the duty to demand that they will. They should demand, when it comes to the killing of the preborn, for example, that their state officials, state legislators, simply defy the federal government and not allow innocent people to be butchered by men who make money for profit off their killing.
Okay, and hang on. I'm sorry, we're up against a quick break. We'll be right back. Mike and Marilyn both want to visit with you, and we have about 10 minutes left in our segment, so we might have to have them on again. So,
we might need to do that.
Yes, as a matter of fact, we could talk about that when we're off the air. We'll be right back with more of Talk Back in a moment. Yeah, real quickly now, we have a very short segment here, and a lot of folks that want to visit. So we've got Pastor Trewhella is with us, and let's get Mike on the line first. Mike, real quickly, what's your question?
Yeah, there's no question. I'm just going to correct him on the Constitution of the United States, and for that matter, the Ten Commandments. This is not a law. The Second Amendment is not a law. Neither is the Constitution, because all laws have rewards or a punishment for violating. There is no such thing in the Constitution. There isn't even one in the Ten Commandments. So please keep that separated when you make these statements that it's a law. It's called the law of the land, but it is not. It's an agreement we are supposed to live by. So I'll get off there, and I know Marilyn wants to talk to you.
All right. Marilyn, you're on with the pastor. Go ahead.
Hey, Matt. I'm so glad you got to be on the show today.
Sure.
I would like you to give a couple of examples of where this has been done. In your book, you mentioned Honduras and
we have 2 minutes to do it, so go ahead, Pastor.
Yeah, well, let me just share a great story that just happened here in America last year. In June of 2013, Sheriff Nick Finch down in Liberty County, Florida, found out that a man had been arrested on an unconstitutional gun law. He released him from his jail. The district attorney found out about it, had him arrested for malfeasance in office, 3 counts. He was looking at 6 years in prison. The governor fired from his job. The people rallied around him. They held public demonstrations outside the courthouse, put together signature gatherings. Their whole point was, why are you attacking our sheriff when he's defending our liberties? And to make a long story short, in October of 2013, his trial was held. It was 3 days long, and it took the jury less than an hour to find him not guilty of all 3 counts of malfeasance, and 3 hours later, the governor reinstated him to office. There's an account of the Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate right here in America just recently, working as it should work. The lower authority standing in interposition against tyranny, bad law, by the higher authority, and the people rallying around the lower magistrate, and a good outcome where he's found not guilty.
Okay, Marilyn, I want to thank you for your call. I want to try to get one more caller. We have less than a minute. James, real quickly, what's your question?
I don't have a question. I have a comment, please. I'd like to say that there's one more thing I'd like to acknowledge that the pastor mentioned some past things.
James, I can barely hear you. You're not speaking into the mouthpiece.
Oh, yes, I am. I guess I'm on a cell phone. It's got a problem there. Can you hear me now?
No, but go ahead. Just speak clearly.
Yeah. I'd like to cite all the listeners to the fact that the mark of the beast is coming, and that'll be a government trying to tell you to do something that will destroy your soul forever.
Okay. So got the mark of the beast, and that's pretty much what I got, and we're out of time. Pastor, we definitely want to have you on again, okay?
Sure.
And we appreciate it, and we will get in touch with you and hopefully make that happen. Unfortunately, we have a hard break here, and we have another guest coming up at the top of the hour. So, Pastor, stay on the line, and we will be right back after the top of the hour. So stay with us. Welcome, everybody. It's hour number 2 of Talkback, and it's sponsored by Bitterroot Motors, where they've been doing it right for more than 41 years. Temperite Service. Call Team Blue, 728-1111. Also brought to you by the Mustard Seed Restaurant. Well, this is an interesting kettle of fish we have here.
Okay, so first off, quick apologies to all the people that called in and that I said we couldn't get you on the air to talk to Pastor Trewhella because we had, right at the top of the hour, we found out that our guest for the top of the hour, who works for the Philadelphia Inquirer, had to be pulled away from coming on our show because of the terrorist attacks, which we talked about at the very beginning of the show going on in France.
You mean the the workplace violence attack?
Okay, I'm going to call it a terrorist attack.
Yeah, okay.
That happened in France.
Right.
So she was called away to do a write-up on this event that's going on.
She covers that beat. That's her story.
So she wasn't able to come on Talkback this morning. We might be able to get her on tomorrow, but it's unlikely. In the interim, though, we were able to, both Steve Wagner from Project Liberty Tree and Matt Trewhella were able to stay with us and are able to take your calls. So if you try to call in, give us a call at 721-1290. Peter, I'm going to go answer these phone calls.
Yes,
I'm going to turn it over to you. Steve Wagner is on the phone from Project Liberty Tree.
Right. Now, we are more nimble than mountain goats on this show. So, Steve, first of all, thank you very, very much for your patience with us and your flexibility in being on with us.
Well, thanks for having us. It's good to just carry on. It's a hot topic for sure.
Boy, you bet. Now, for those who may have just joined us at 9 o'clock, would you mind just hitting the high points of what Pastor did at the legislature and basically the basic message of what his sermon was about?
Okay, well, a lot of people are becoming more aware of the colonial pastor's role in our founding era. And when I say the founding era, I'm talking from the early 1600s up to and through the War for Independence and the adoption of our Constitution. For 150, 160 years, the pulpit in America, in the colonies, and then later in the states, instructed people on the biblical doctrines of civil governance or civil liberties, the rights of man, the proper role of civil government, the proper duties of the people to obey and resist, how to define tyranny and tyrants, what the rights that God has endowed all men with are, and so on and so forth. So most people don't realize that much of what founded America was the theology of liberty drawn from the Scripture and applied by faithful pastors for many, many decades. And so Project Liberty Tree came into existence as a ministry of our little Covenant Community Church in Whitehall to go out and help reintroduce people to this history, to this legacy, to this heritage, and to the doctrines of liberty that were preached and taught, because most people in America today don't really even understand what freedom and liberty is.
Now, Steve, this is interesting you would say that, because several years ago we had a regular guest on the show, a pastor from the Bitterroot Valley, and he brought up something similar in that the pastors during that time, because they traditionally wore black, they were known as the I believe either the Black Battalion or the Black Regiment. I think the Black Regiment.
The Black Robed Regiment.
Yes.
Or the Black Regiment. Yes, that's true.
And doing exactly what you were talking about, standing in the pulpit and encouraging the people and basically letting them, informing them of in biblical terms of how to preserve and protect their own liberties. Right.
Correct. That's right. And today, many people think if a pastor or a spiritual leader gets involved in politics, and because we've had so many examples of this, that they're either right wing or left wing, or conservative or liberal, or that's not what the pulpit was, and that's not what Project Liberty Tree is wanting to bring around. It's thus saith the Lord God concerning the civil realm and the subjects of justice, mercy, equity, and those things are all religious issues, or they are grounded in a religious theology. So you can't separate the two. And today we're so fractured between these different camps that are set against each other, and it's just a big yelling match. And we feel somebodies have to stand up and say, "What saith the Lord God concerning this?" So that's what we're about, and that's why we do these election sermons and encourage people to learn more about this.
All right, and I will give everybody a little heads up. At 3 o'clock here in Missoula at the public library, they'll be here. And by they, you might have just heard Steve if you joined us at the top of the hour, but we were speaking during the first half hour with Pastor Matt Trewhella, who I'm going to have you shift over to if you could, Steve, because we have a line of callers that want to get to him.
And we're up against a break, too. So.
Anyway, Pastor Trewhella gave a sermon at the start of the legislative session called The Duty of the Lower Magistrates in the Face of Tyranny, which got a lot of flack in local papers, specifically the Missoulian. I'm going to link that article to our website so you can kind of see what people are saying about the sermon. I wasn't there, so I don't have any realm, but you can ask Matt himself because he gave the sermon.
Right.
And we'll take your calls right after this break. You can give us a call at 721-1290 or leave a Facebook post on our website.
Harry and David. Gosh, there's a business in there somewhere. No, Harry and Dave are both waiting to visit with Pastor Trewhella, and we will get as many calls as we can for this hour. We'll be right back. This is Talk Back, and it's Wednesday, and we again want to say thank you to Matt Trewhella and also to Steve Wagner from Project Liberty Tree for being with us this morning. Now, Matt, it's good to have you back, sir.
Good to be here.
All right, are you ready to take some calls?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's get back to the phones and say good morning to Harry. Good morning. Thanks for your patience, sir. You're on with Pastor Trewhella. Go ahead. There we go. Harry, I'm sorry. Harry, you're on. Go ahead.
Yeah, good morning. I take you've mentioned that moral laws, and I take it you determine the moral laws by going by what the Bible says, God's laws, God's word says, right?
That's correct.
So, and you also mentioned that you take the Bible as whole, so that how you determine what the Bible says. So, given that, how could we have a First Amendment in the Constitution? Because it says that that you can worship any way you want to, but the First Commandment of the Bible says, "I am thy Lord God; thou shalt have no god before me." And throughout the whole Bible, there is no place that says it's okay to worship other gods. So, I mean, right there, it throws out that part of our Constitution.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't think.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
So how do you stand under? I mean, how do you abide by a government that allows that, Matt?
Yeah.
A government that allows what?
Worshipping
people to worship other gods.
The Bible says you should not worship other gods.
Right.
That's a big one. That's number one.
You're right.
And yet the Constitution declares, that we have the freedom of religion in this country, right? Or shall we say that the government shall not impose any religion on the people? Right. Okay.
So do you see any disagreement? It seems like that's what Harry's trying to say, is that there's a conflict between scriptures and your government.
No, not at all. In fact, our founding fathers understood that the moral law of God was to be the objective standard by which the governments of men were judged, and the laws of men are judged, whether they're right or wrong, good or evil, just or unjust, moral or immoral. In fact, whether you read, this was the thinking of Western man for nearly 1,500 years throughout Western civilization. Whether you read, Alfred the Great in the 9th century, or you read John of Salisbury in the 12th century, or you read William Blackstone in the 18th century, they all agreed that the law of God was the objective standard, or the higher law by which all laws and all governments of men were to be judged. In fact, William Blackstone, for example, who is the most cited legal scholar by America's founding fathers, who established the First Amendment, said of God's law, he said, upon these two foundations, the law of nature and the law of revelation, talking about God's written law, depend all human laws. He said that is to say, no human laws should be suffered to contradict these. He also said, he went on to say, talking about the law of God, is binding over all the globe, in all countries, and at all times. No human laws are of any validity, if contrary to this, and such of them as are valid derive all their force and all their authority, immediately or immediately, from this original, the doctrine thus delivered we call the revealed or divine law, and they are found only in the Holy Scriptures.
So here is...
This is the most cited legal scholar by America's founders who gave.
But it's still, I mean, there's
not a contradiction. There's not a problem here. There's not a problem. Here's my point.
Go ahead, Harry.
What?
I said, go ahead, Harry.
But still, I mean, it's saying, I mean, the number one commandment of God is, I am the Lord God, thou shalt have no God before me. I mean, how plain can that be? So, I mean, this idea that that's not contradicting the First Amendment, I don't get it.
There was no crime if you didn't worship Him.
Oh, yes, there was. People got... Have you read your Bible?
Also, it's important to understand that these were people who joined themselves to a particular nation called Israel, which was set apart to be a light to the world to which nations could join themselves. Jesus changed the paradigm on that. We now, as individuals, rather than a standing nation, go to all the nations of the world in order to bring the law and gospel of the Lord to people. So there's a different paradigm between the Old Testament and the New Testament. And again, it wasn't a law that carried any sanction to it. What was that?
Go ahead, Harry.
That throughout history, look at all these before the United States. The United States is the first country that has allowed pretty much the worship of any god. So I mean, this idea that everybody, that is contradicting the Bible. The Bible does not say you can worship any god. I'm sorry. I mean, you don't read your Bible, please.
Well, hey, Harry, real quick. Pastor
So why
Trewhella.
is there a problem?
Pastor, hang on, just go ahead, John.
I think that there is a distinction should be made that I think will help clarify the debate. When you're talking about God's law to Israel, or you're talking about God's law to individuals or to humans, I think there's a distinction. When are God's laws to be applied in the civil realm to a state in the same way that you would apply them in your own life? Obviously, a state, an entity, a government cannot commit the same sins that an individual could, according to God's law. A state can't really lust after another, right? A state can't really do some of the things that you can do as an individual. So when we talk about God's law and man's laws, which we're necessarily talking about when we're talking about government, there's a little bit of a difference.
But didn't God punish the whole nations for the things of a few people? I mean, in the Old Testament especially, if somebody did something wrong, God punished the whole nation for it. The king did it was something wrong, so it wasn't just per man. It was
Where did he do that at?
Let's see. Let me see. I don't have it on hand right now, but
sure.
Well, let's just throw an easy one out there. Pharaoh betrayed his promise to Moses, and then all the firstborn die.
Yeah. I mean, there's all times, all the way through there. Even in Israel, they got two people got caught doing something wrong. The whole nation was punished for it.
Well, Harry, I wish we had a chance to have a theological debate and solve this for you, but unfortunately, we've got a lot of other people who want to get on. I appreciate your call. You bring up some good points. We're up against a break, so Pastor, hang on. We've got Dave who's waiting. We also have a line open for you, 721-1290. We'll come right back. Pastor Matt Trewhella is joining us, and he's going off the sermon that he preached at the state capitol at the start of the legislature. We'll be right back. Hey, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is the number, and just happen to be all lines full right now. And joining us on the telephone, Matt Trewhella, and he's from Wisconsin, but he's here in Montana with Project Liberty Tree and talking about the duty of the lower magistrates in the face of tyranny. Having an interesting discussion with folks. I want to get back to the phone. And Dave, I apologize for teasing you earlier, but you're on now. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. You've stated that you're opposed to abortions. I'm curious, what do you think of birth control pills? And what should happen to women who, if you're against it, what should happen to women? What should be the punishment for new laws for women?
Yeah, as a Christian minister, I oppose birth control completely. Any form of birth control that would kill the preborn child should be outlawed. And any woman or man who's involved in the killing of an unborn child should be tried for murder.
How about condoms and things like that?
Yeah, condoms, I wouldn't use them. Me and my wife have 11 children. We actually like the children God gives us. We don't want to keep that blessing away from us, but I understand other people like to use those devices. I don't think it goes against God's law in the sense of it's harming anyone else, whereas abortion is clearly killing a completely separate human being, so that should be prescribed by law.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the call, Dave. All right.
Sure.
So let's get Eric on the line. We have a line open, by the way, 721-1290. Eric, go ahead. You're on with Pastor Trewhella. Go ahead.
Hi. I'd like to point out that all sins are primarily against God. And I'd also like to clarify the First Amendment where it says Congress shall make no law with respect to religion. Founders meant that as the Christian religion. And they understood that most Christian religions worship the one and true God. And you have to look at how they defined religion. Religion was that there's going to be a judgment someday, and where God will reward righteousness and evil in the afterlife with punishments or rewards. And also, I believe the founders took the Bible as a whole, where the first table of the law, as our worship towards God, was left to the conscience. The second table They're sins against God, but also against our neighbor, where you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and you shall not covet. It's hard for the government to deal with coveting. Anyway, I'll let your guest comment on that. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for the call. So, do you find any disagreement there with what Eric had to say, Pastor?
Well, from what I understood him to be saying, I think I agree with most of what he was saying there. To me, what's important is that we understand that God, in His Word, does speak to all matters of life, including matters of civil government. So He does have something to say to man, having created us, regarding how magistrates should govern, state officials should govern, and how government should run. And the reason we have these election sermons that were held in the Capitol this past week is because, and the reason the election sermons were held for over 150 years in this country regularly across the nation, was because the magistrates and the clergy themselves both understood that if the people don't understand the limits, functions, and purposes of the government, then the government will be able to do whatever it wants. It's only when you have a people that understands the function, purpose, and limits of government that you can keep government in check so that it doesn't become a tyrant. They also understood that there needed to be this objective standard, which was the moral law of God, so that the governments of men could be judged by that standard, whether they were making good law or bad law.
But now hold on, Pastor. What during that time weren't the principles that you're basically discussing primarily simply understood by the population at that time, and that we are here in the 21st century, we have a totally different society that sees many of the things you're saying as simply foreign and perhaps even cruel.
Right. Well, I don't think they're cruel, but they're definitely foreign to a lot of people, and that's why we're trying to do this once again, because it was needed and necessary for people to understand. You see what you end up with when like, look at this. People like to point at Christianity and say, "Oh, look at all the people that were killed," through the Inquisition. Well, experts say that during the Inquisition, which lasted 500 years, even the most Christ-hating scholars say that probably the most people that were killed were 50,000 people. Yet, when you remove God from the equation completely, and 50,000 people is wrong. And anytime you have some man involved in anything, including Christianity, you're going to have abuse of power. You're going to have people who do things wrong. But there you have 50,000 over a 500-year period. Yet if you look at an atheistic society like China and the Soviet Union, they killed over 100 million people in less than 100 years, and that's probably a low number, 100 million. So you see a little bit of a difference between the two. So our goal as Christians and as a Christian minister is to try to bring the Word of God to the people, to show them God does have something to say about governments, including this matter of when there's tyranny within your own government, making law which, impugns the created order of God and says 2 men or 2 women can marry, allows preborn babies to be murdered and butchered, allows the government to come in and stand there and tell you that they're going to tell you what kind of health care you can or cannot get, and you have to have them as part of your contractual agreement with your doctor. These types of things, and you have a government that relentlessly tries to, from time to time.
Okay, Matt, I got to jump in right there.
The people, it has to be taken to task.
Okay, Matt, I got to jump in. So, John, you had a question?
Well, I'll get to it after the break.
Okay, we're up against a break. We have Misty and Catherine that both want to visit with you, and I'm not sure we have any Facebook comments yet, so I'm sure we'll probably get some of those as well. We will be right back with more of Talkback right after this quick timeout. Talkback rolling right along here on this Wednesday, January the 7th, 2015. Joining us on the phone, Pastor Matt Trewhella, who is from Wisconsin, visiting here in Missoula, and just spoke not long ago at the state capitol.
Yeah, I wanted to, we got callers real quick, but right before the break, Pastor Trewhella, I want to keep wanting to say master because his name is Matt Trewhella and he's a pastor.
Okay, all right.
I'm sure he is the master of his Trewhella. Anyway, Pastor Trewhella, one of the things you said right before the break, you brought up some things that were going on in modern society. One of the things you brought up was homosexuality and homosexual marriage. And it seems to me that when you're talking about homosexual marriage, and a point that Harry brought up earlier was that in a society like the United States that has establishment clause in the First Amendment, to allow religions of varying disagreements, and even Christian. I mean, the Westminster Catechism calls the Catholic Pope the Antichrist. I think originally. I mean, there was not a lot of love between different Christian denominations at the time, or even still in some sectors. So. It seems to me that when you have a document like our Constitution, which allows for things that maybe the Bible wouldn't allow an individual to do, you also have a similar issue when it comes to gay marriage, and where you have a government allowing something that maybe the Bible wouldn't allow. So, how do you cut the difference between these allowances that the Constitution allows?
Well, first off, the law of God is binding upon all men at all time, regardless of the state of mind of those within the culture or the government. But you have to understand here, this is the federal government imposing homosexual marriage upon the states. The people in the states voted. They made it clear in 33 states that they wanted marriage to be only between a man and a woman. And the federal government comes in through raw judicial power and tramples state constitutions, stating that you're going to have homosexual marriage because we want you to.
That's what they did here in Montana.
That's what they did in Wisconsin, where I'm from, too. And so what we're saying is that the lower magistrates, the state legislators, the governor, state officials, need to stand in interposition for the people, defend the Constitution of Montana, and defy the federal government and say, no, we're not going to do it.
So let me ask you this, Matt. Do you have a problem with the homosexual marriage if the states had decided, let's say the people had voted on it, that their legislature had pushed it through, and that everything was done that route instead of through legislative? And I agree with you. I think it was judicial activism for most of these cases. If it had gone through the state legislature, if it had gone that route, would you still have a problem with it?
Well, as a Christian, I would speak out against it. I would make God's law and word known in that regard. Absolutely.
Would you promote the use of the doctrine of the lower magistrate in rebellion against it?
Yes, I would encourage county clerks to defy it at that point if a state did follow that, to do what's right and to take a stand. We don't divorce our Christianity from our public office. You have to understand that.
So we actually had a case of a county clerk.
Yes, we did.
Here in the state of Montana.
In Billings, yeah.
I can't remember her
Yellowstone
name.
County, yeah.
I don't know if they did reveal her name. Anyway, do you think that she took the right course in refusing to issue those documents?
You had a county clerk that refused to issue a marriage license to a homosexual couple here in Montana.
Or should she have just quit her job?
No, she should not quit her job. This is an important aspect of showing tyranny for what it is. That if everyone goes along with the tyranny of the federal government and just submits to it, then their tyranny isn't seen for what it is. It's important to understand that when the tyrant does what he does, men have to do what's right, what's good, and what's just in order to bring the tyrant out of his lair, so to speak.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's
show his colors.
Let's
people can see his tyranny for what it is.
Okay.
So that county clerk would be attacked by the federal government or by higher state officials. Then people could see, and they can rally to this county clerk and say, "This is wrong. She did right. She defied the federal beast."
Okay, Pastor, hang on just a minute. Let's get Misty on the line. She's been waiting very patiently. Misty, go ahead.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Excellent. What's on your mind, ma'am?
Good. I have a comment and a question. I think that birth control is birth control. Condoms, birth control pills, shot, whatever, these are all devices that are used solely to prevent a pregnancy that would otherwise occur. I think it's wonderful that you have 11 kids. I think it's wonderful that you have a great marriage and that you're able to provide very well for all those kids. My question is, because I like to listen to this radio station, I like to listen to all of the different sides. I've heard people call in about wanting to fix the Medicaid food stamp problem that we have here in the U.S. And I hear the same people calling in praying that abortion is illegal all over. I think that the two are intertwined, and my question is, do you not think that those are contradictory, that we should pray for abortion to be illegal everywhere and still expect to find a solution for the problem of Medicaid and welfare?
Yeah. Well, the truth of the matter is,
Thanks,
Christian
Misty.
people... Sure, thank you. No, I don't see a contradiction in the least bit. I'm totally against socialism. I learned a long time ago that when the government sticks its nose in everybody else's business, things go worse, they don't go better. I'm a strong believer in the fact that the state has brought in a plethora of laws into our domestic affairs for one purpose, and that's to weaken the family, because every good statist knows that in order to strengthen the state, you have to weaken the family. So I don't see it as a contradiction at all. Leave me alone. Let me take care of my own medical matters with my family. And all these do-gooder programs are designed for one thing, to allow the government to more invasively invade everyone's life. And haven't we seen how it's gone? What are we, $18 trillion in debt now?
Exactly. And you know what, Pastor? We're also up against a break. I told you about every 10 minutes. So if you'll hang on just a minute, we have Catherine, and we have one line open for you, 721-1290. Agree, disagree? It's what the show's all about. You have an opportunity to air your opinion, and we'll be right back with more in a moment. We're on Talkback, and thank you for joining us this morning. We sure appreciate it. Interesting conversation going on. We have Pastor Matt Trewhella. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, we got a question from a caller. Wants to know about the oath of office and what that represents when a legislator or a public official takes the oath.
You know what? I'm not well-versed in that at all. And, yeah, I'm not in a position to answer it because
all right,
I'm not knowledgeable enough.
Then let's get back to the phones. And Catherine has been waiting a long time. Catherine, thank you for your patience. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. From what the little that I know about the concept of the lesser magistrates, it comes out of John Calvin and his, in this iteration was expressed by John Calvin and Martin Luther. And that, of course, Calvinism discusses the absolute depravity of human beings. There's absolutely no way that they can be anything. They're slaves to God or slaves to the devil. I'm curious where you stand on the Calvinism versus Catholicism in that way, because traditional Catholicism has a tendency towards monarchicalism, divine right of kings, and which is one of the splits in Christendom, I guess.
Yeah, due to the Reformation, right? Yeah.
Yeah, during the Reformation, and the colonies back in the day when the Revolution was going on, and the Constitution and Bill of Rights and et cetera, were being hammered out. Some of the colonies were Protestant, they were Congregationalist, they were Calvinistic. And then, of course, there was Maryland, kind of the outlier. It was Catholic. And then Virginia also was more Catholic. Where do you stand on that kind of thing? And where do you stand on whether the doctrine of lesser magistrates should be used in things that these days our Constitution allows, such as, just as an example, we have Mormons in positions of authority in Congress, we have women in positions of authority, and we have women voting, and those are all frowned upon by both Calvin and Luther, but they are enfolded within the American government.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. So what do you think, Pastor?
Yeah, the doctrine was formed by Lutheran ministers in Magdeburg, Germany in 1550. The doctrine of the lower magistrates. It was first formalized as a Christian doctrine in that year in what's known as the Magdeburg Confession. And it was picked up by John Knox, who was a reformer out of Scotland. He actually wrote in 1558 his appellation to the nobles of Scotland. And in there he furthered the doctrine of the lower magistrate by citing over 70 passages of Scripture. the Lutheran pastors in the Magdeburg Confession cited several passages of Scripture, and they also cited much history to establish the position that the lower magistrate could stand in interposition or defy the higher authority when they make unjust or immoral laws, policies, or court opinions. But it was John Knox who furthered it.
Yeah,
And,
not John Calvin. I'd say this as I'm Dutch Reform. I guess you could call me a Calvinist if you'd like to call me that, but it's not. I certainly don't confess the Magdeburg Confession. I don't think very many people do. It's kind of one of the lesser-known confessions in Christian history.
Yeah, in fact, we just had it. I was instrumental in getting it published in English for the first time 2 years ago.
Wow.
There you go. That's a good example of how relatively unknown it is.
What you have to understand is that when I was doing my study, at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. and other places, I kept running across scholars who would cite the Magdeburg Confession as the first time the doctrine was formalized. And so I wanted to read it, of course. And I spent 8 months talking to scholars, librarians, and historians across America and Europe trying to get an English translation. Found out there never was one. And so we secured a 1550 original in the Bavarian State Library in Munich, Germany. And I had a guy named Matthew Colvin, who has a Ph.D. in Latin and Greek literature, do the translation work. And now it's available to English-speaking people for the first time since it was written over 460 years ago. Oh. So this document is of huge importance. In fact, within it you see elements, as you do in Knox's writings, of you see shadows or thunderings within our own Declaration of Independence here in the founding of our nation that clearly had a huge impact upon the thinking of men as things developed. Now, it's not just a Christian doctrine, it's not just a Calvinistic doctrine or a Reformed doctrine or something, or a Lutheran doctrine. This lower magistrate doctrine was practiced before this by Christian men. Take, for example, the nobles who met King John in the fields of Runnymede, so that he, bloodlessly, was forced to sign the Magna Carta.
Yeah, we just discussed that yesterday with Rob Nadelson, who's our kind of our on-site constitutional scholar once a month.
Yes. So there you have the doctrine of the lower magistrate in action right there. You also had it, of course, many other examples, but you have it in the Old Testament. Take for Daniel, for instance. Daniel, didn't only refuse to obey the king out of his fealty as a follower of the Lord. We have to remember he also did it in the office of a lower magistrate. He was one of 3 governors directly under the king. And so when he defied, and he did defy, he sat in front of the open window, knelt down so no one could mistake what he was doing, did it 3 times to be sure he was caught. He acted as a buffer to the rest of the people in the empire by hazarding his own life in order to show fealty to the Lord. But it's important also to know that the lower magistrate doctrine is even seen in non-Christian nations. Take, for example, the story I start out with in my book on the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. I talk about the story of a governor named Publius Petronius. He was the governor of Palestine in 39 A.D., directly under Caligula. He was tyranny personified, if you know anything about him. And he got ticked off at the Jews about something and ordered Governor Petronius to make a statue. He was the governor of Palestine. Make a statue and install it in the temple in Jerusalem. Well, Petronius did that. He made the statue. He gathered 12,000 soldiers. Thought there might be a little trouble when he did this. Well, the Jews found out about it, and they sent him delegation after delegation. I'm talking 10 to 30,000 men at times.
Got to hurry this up, Pastor. We're up against a break.
Yep. Okay. And so what ended up happening was finally Petronius agreed with them. He would not obey the law of the emperor. And he sent word to Caligula that he wouldn't obey. Caligula was ticked. He sent word to Petronius to kill himself. 2 weeks later, in God's providence, Caligula was assassinated by his Praetorian Guard. And fortunately for Petronius, the ship carrying word for him to kill himself arrived after the ship carrying news that the emperor had been assassinated.
All right. And with that, we're up against a 1-minute break. And Marlon and Tyler, I'm going to try to get your calls in. As we get ready to close the show, it's been a fascinating hour. And again, we thank the pastor for his time. We'll be right back. Oh, we're rapidly running out of time, and this has been a fascinating conversation. Again, we thank Pastor Trewhella for spending so much time with us, but I want to get through as many calls as we can because that's kind of what we do here. We're a talk show. So, Marlon, thank you for your patience in holding. Please go ahead.
Well, thank you, Matt, for what work you're doing. I just wanted to address what we call the law of God. I've been a student of the Bible for a long time, and people, I get asked the question a lot of how come God had his people slaughter nations, you know. Some people call it a genocide thing or something. But if you look at the history, when God first created man, the Bible tells us that he let them do what was right in their own sight. And it took about 1,500 years, but man had finally turned the earth totally evil. So violence and evil ruled the earth, and so God wiped it out. He said, this time I'm going to start over, and only this time I'm going to give some guidelines to live by. He says, I'm going to make sure my people don't steal from anybody. They don't lie to other people. They don't commit adultery with other people. They don't murder people, you know. And it was so important to God that he literally legislated it. He said, this is the way my people are going to live. And if they didn't, the penalty was death.
You might say it was written in stone.
Right, might say it was written in stone. And Numbers 14 records where they found somebody out gathering firewood on the Sabbath, and they went back to Moses and said, what do we do? Moses goes, I don't know. Nobody's broke God's laws before, so they had to ask God, and God said he has to die. You have to take him outside the camp and die, because God knew if cancer gets started, it'll spread. And so when nations would embrace Israel, see, Israel represented God, which is no lying, no stealing, no killing.
Tyler, I'm sorry, Martin or Marlon, we really have to hustle up here. So if you have a point, can you make it quickly?
Well, yeah, the Bible, the law of God, was still, we're still ruled by. Our country was founded on that book, the Bible. They call us the people of the book. There was, for 100 years, there was church service held in the White House for the first 100 years. You know, the Ten Commandments are still on the Supreme Court justices' walls, you know, and our motto is, in God we trust. And so it's not really freedom to worship any God. I mean, it's about the Bible, and there's only one Bible. There's only one God of the Bible.
Marlon, okay, real quick, you know the law of God. All of us would be taken outside of the camp and killed. It's impossible for us to uphold. That's why there's the gospel.
Yeah, and Marlon, I'm sorry, we don't have time to get into a theological argument here. So let's get Tyler. Tyler, I'm sorry about that. Tyler, you're on. Go ahead.
Hi, I try to make it quick. I think we kind of got off in the weeds as far as all this theological discussion, and I think we can tone it real quick right back in and bring this conversation back into the unconstitutional actions that the President of the United States is taking, the actions that the governors of the states should be doing, like the governors of Texas and Arizona. When Obama tells them, stop deporting people, these governors need to stand up and say, no, it's the law, and we're going to follow the law. And I'd like to get your guys' comment on that.
Okay, thank you so much. So what do you think, Pastor?
Yeah, we have a federal government, and I'm glad he brought it back. So
we have 2.5 minutes.
Doctrine of what's that?
We have 2.5 minutes.
Okay, because the doctrine of the lower magistrate addresses when the higher authority becomes tyrannical. We clearly have a federal government that has left its constitutional restraints long ago, and they are imposing tyranny upon the people. People understand that. I don't even have to detail it. They have a list of them themselves. If you go to Washington, D.C., you'll notice that they're making the place into a veritable fortress. And I'll tell you, when I was out there a couple of years ago, the fortress-like nature of the place reminded me of what Plato said to the tyrant Dionysius when he saw him on the streets of Sicily, surrounded by his many bodyguards. Plato said to him, what harm have you done that you should need so many guards? And that's because our federal government has harmed the American people. You know, you review their policies, laws, bureaucracies, court rulings, and see they've caused much harm to the American people.
Pastor, I'm going to jump in right here because we're almost out of time. And I know that folks are interested if they want to get your book or get more information about what you're talking about. Where can they go? What can they do? And how can they communicate with you if they agree or disagree?
Sure. Yep. They can go to our website, lessermagistrate.com.
Okay.
LESSER, magistrate.com. If they're interested in my books, you can get it there. They can also get the book at Amazon.com.
Now, what's the title of the book again?
The title of the book is The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates, a proper response to tyranny and a repudiation of unlimited obedience to civil government.
All right. Well, we deeply appreciate you. Did you have an email address where people can get in touch with you?
Yes, I do. Matt at lessermagistrate.com.
All right.
That's 2 T's. Yep.
All right. Matt, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it, and we'll try to keep in touch.
Hey, thank you so much.
You take care, sir.
All right. God bless you guys.
Bye-bye. Wow. Interesting discussion. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to jump in on people, but we just had a time factor. We had
running out of time.
Yeah,
Not much. By the way, tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be able to talk about what's going on in France today.
Right.
With someone from the Montana World Affairs Council. Well, maybe we'll just have open phones. I don't know. Everything's shifted on me
because today could have been quite a sounding board and a jump off point, perhaps till tomorrow. So anyway, if you had comments you didn't get a chance to make, perhaps we can do that tomorrow as well. So thanks for joining us here on Talkback. We appreciate it, and of course this broadcast will be on our podcast page later on today. So drive safe and have a great day.